Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Washington as he sits down with President Trump at the White House. Defense deals will be on the table as Trump confirms the US will sell F-35s to Saudi Arabia, calling them a great ally. And the UN Security Council approved Trump's peace plan, including the establishment of an international stabilization force in Gaza. It's been called an important step in the consolidation of the ceasefire. Now, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Washington today, meeting US President Donald Trump at the White House. MBS previously sat down with Trump during his first presidential term in 2018. The two leaders have become close allies over the years. They met in Riyadh back in May, where they announced several key investment opportunities and increased diplomatic ties between the kingdom and the United States. We can now go live to Washington to speak to our correspondent, Kate Fisher. Kate, this is going to be quite the welcome today.
Absolutely. This is the grandest reception that essentially we've seen for any foreign leader during this second Trump term. A real fanfare complete with cannons and US and Saudi flags draped on buildings near the White House. The US military is expected to conduct a flyover. And then tonight, a black tie dinner with 120 guests, including big tech CEOs like Elon Musk and even golfer Tiger Woods, we understand, and senior business tycoons from across the United States.
And what is Donald Trump hoping to get out of this visit?
Well, he is expecting to be able to make announcements regarding investment from Saudi Arabia into the United States and things like artificial intelligence, enhanced cooperation on civil nuclear energy, defense, sales, and he's hoping for the fulfillment of that $600 billion investment pledge made by the Saudis, which was announced during that trip to Saudi Arabia that you mentioned in May. The visit's expected to include an Oval Office meeting and a lunch in the cabinet room, and the White House is saying that the American people can expect what they're saying is good deals for the country, spanning technology, manufacturing, critical minerals, defense, and more. But I think also key to this for Donald Trump certainly will be trying to put pressure on the Crown Prince to sign up to the Abraham Accords. That's a long-term goal of Washington's and particularly of Donald Trump's. That would normalize relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But from analysts, speaking to analysts here, they don't expect that to be advanced on this visit, with the war in Gaza in this kind of fragile ceasefire, and of course the Crown Prince steadfastly saying that the only way he would sign up to that is if there were first steps taken towards creating a Palestinian state.
And also, the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia would mark a really significant policy shift from the US.
Yeah, that's right. And Donald Trump has said that is going to happen, and that 48 of those advanced aircrafts will be sent to Saudi Arabia. And it would be the first US sale to an Arab country. And as you say, marking a significant policy shift. And it could essentially alter the military balance in the Middle East and test Washington's definition of maintaining what it's termed as Israel's qualitative military edge, because at the moment, the only other country in the Middle East that has these weapons is Israel. Israel wants to keep it that way, of course, but clearly that stumbling block between Israel and the US, clearly Israel, another key ally of the United States, that appears to have been overcome given Donald Trump saying that that deal will go ahead, although there has been an intelligence report released here that has raised concerns that China could acquire the technology behind those weapons if this sale goes through. But clearly this is an important deal that Donald Trump has signalled will go ahead, and the Crown Prince is seeking defence deals and security guarantees on this trip to the US.
And Kate, how significant are any deals signed between President Donald Trump and MBS, given a new US president could actually back out of these deals?
Yeah, overshadowing much of this huge pomp and circumstance and all the talk of these fabulous deals is the fact that essentially they are being founded on the personal relationship between the Crown Prince and Donald Trump. This warm rapport that the two men share, which dates back, of course, to the first term of Donald Trump as president of the US, because these deals will lack the binding commitments that would be secured through congressional approval of them, and therefore when a new president comes to power in the United States, he or she could unwind those deals. And that's a real challenge for the Saudis because there are no formal guarantees that these deals will outlast the Trump administration. And of course, MBS is likely to be in power for many more years. And then he will have to deal with a succession of American presidents. And he won't have clarity that these deals will continue past the Trump administration. But of course, the Trump family has many business deals in Saudi Arabia, and they will continue past any term in the White House. And I don't think you can avoid the fact that these two families essentially are intertwined financially as well as politically right now.
Kate Fisher in Washington for us. Thank you so much for joining me. For more on this, I'm joined from Riyadh by Saudi Arabian political analyst specializing in US-Saudi relations, Ahmed Al-Ibrahim. Thank you so much for joining me. I just want to point you to what we're watching on our screen at the moment. There's a lot of fanfare happening at the White House. We're now seeing the US military officially open the doors. Donald Trump has walked out of them as, of course, he prepares to meet the Saudi Crown Prince today. Any moment now, we'll see the two men meeting each other. President Donald Trump has said this is more than a meeting. The US is honoring the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. What can we expect to see from this visit, and how high stakes is it for both sides?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, and my greetings to you and to your viewers. It's such a great day today in Washington, D.C. I see this visit much bigger than actually a protocol photo. It's going to be, as President Trump always say, we recognize Mohammed bin Salman as the new architect of the new Middle East, and we want to be part of that story. For both leaders, the stakes is high. For the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, it's not anymore about oil. It's more about region stability. It's Saudi Arabia is one of the fastest growing countries in the G20. It's about AI. It's about defense. It's about Vision 2030. It's about investment in both countries. So it's not just a meeting. It is actually a visit to reset the U.S.-Saudi relationship around a new reality, and it comes with confidence rising from Saudi Arabia, from a young leader, which is the Crown Prince, who thinks actually in decades. He doesn't think with news cycles.
And while you were just speaking to me, Ahmed, we are now seeing President Donald Trump standing next to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House. Both men greeted each other with a warm hug. Donald Trump and Mohammed bin Salman both smiling as we see them meet. So the first time in 7 years that MBS has gone to the White House. We obviously saw him there during Donald Trump's first term. And as you mentioned to me, the pair are expected to discuss a defense pact, AI investment, and Gaza. We're also just hearing a military fly-past happening now as we see all the fanfare, US and Saudi flags. Ahmed, Donald Trump has put on such a show for the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Is this a surprise to you, or does it really signify how close the two men have become?
Oh my goodness, this picture is just an amazing picture. You mentioned, 7 years ago, MBS walked into the White House as a young reformer. Today he returns, the leader who actually delivers transformation, who delivers giga project, tourism, woman empowerment. He reflects a lot of things to become, or made Saudi Arabia to become a regional power in the Middle East. This personal relationship, the synergy is undeniably between Trump and MBS, and that comes after years and years of trust, of investing with each other, if actually seeing eye to eye with policies, and the right advancement is working with stakeholders in the United States. So this does not come between day and night. It comes more on how strategically both leaders has been working for their own people to empower them. Today Saudi Arabia, or MBS, is judged by 32 million Saudis. The same thing with Trump, is judged by his taxpayers. Whatever these sign pacts is going to be signed by MBS or President Donald Trump, is going to reflect about economy. We need these semiconductors, we need the rare earth minerals, we need a lot of technology from the United States. We're going to actually employ more than 40,000 people in the United States to deliver these kind of jets, to deliver these, at the Boeing factory. So this is going to play a major role for both countries to give more to their people, to, inspire more relationship, to, cement this kind of relationship between the two countries.
So you just spoke there to me about the deals and what the countries both need from each other, and also reacting to those pictures of the Crown Prince and Donald Trump standing there and the fanfare the White House has put on for Mohammed bin Salman. But other than investment deals and what they are looking to get from each other, do you think both countries will discuss regional stability? It's no secret President Donald Trump would like Saudi to normalize ties with Israel. Will that conversation come up?
Definitely, of course, regional stability will be on the table. President Trump has made it clear he wants Saudi Arabia to play a central role of any future regional architect. But there is an important point that we need to basically stop on it and understand that Saudi Arabia is not desperate for a deal. Saudi Arabia sets the term of any deal. MBS has been very clear that any path toward normalization must include real steps on the Palestinian right, and a statehood must strengthen regional security, not just a procedure or headlines that we are making. It's definitely the two-state solution, the dignity for the Palestinian people. So to your question, yes, the topic will be discussed, but it will be discussed from a position of Saudi Arabia's strength and principle. Riyadh today is a rule maker in the region, not a passive player, as you know.
And it's clear the Crown Prince and Donald Trump have a very special relationship in comparison to the relationship between MBS and the former US President Joe Biden. How will this deep personal relationship impact what MBS is able to bring back home from DC when this trip to Washington concludes?
So we definitely agree there is a personal relationship between MBS and President Donald Trump, even to extend it to the family and, the visits, the investment of the Trump family here in Saudi Arabia and vice versa. However, the chemistry is there, the deal is there, under Biden administration, even though he said that he's going to make Saudi Arabia as a pariah within 4 years, President Biden came to Saudi Arabia within 2 times. So that shows you the weight that Saudi Arabia holds. But the dynamics is different with President Donald Trump. When the leaders have trust and respect, things can move faster. bolder and with fewer layers of bureaucracy, because the trust is, is there. For MBS, this relationship is only a tool, not a trophy. This is very important that we need to highlight. If this personal laptop allows him to secure stronger security guarantees, more ambitious investment committee, better access to critical technology, and clear recognition of the Saudi leadership, then it will be used to bring concrete wins back home to Saudi Arabia. So it's not only a relationship that actually needs to stand there. This is actually all an investment by MBS into the Trump administration to actually bring wins to Saudi Arabia. At the end of the day, as I mentioned before, MBS is judged by his people, by his wins that he's going to bring to Saudi Arabia, and this is why our leaders has been always taking Saudi Arabia to a prosperous, advancement to a new path. Today, Saudi Arabia is one of the top countries in the G20 and a permanent sitter in the G7, and it's basically a focal point from all the investment around the world. So these kind of relationship, this charisma that MBS has with Donald Trump, with Sarkozy, with not Sarkozy, sorry, with the French Macron, with the British Prime Minister, with these kind of countries, it does bring these kind of bureaucracy down, and we are more faster in doing investment, even with China, with Russia, with other countries around the world. So it's there to stay. It's for the Saudi people, and the principle of trade is how can I benefit the other countries by the time that I can benefit my people.
And I want to ask you one really quick question before I let you go. Apparently, Cristiano Ronaldo, the captain of the Saudi football club Al Nassr, will also be at the White House accompanying MBS. Are you a fan? Is this a good idea?
I am a fan personally of Cristiano Ronaldo, even though I'm Hilali and he is from Al-Nassr, so he's my rival, but I like him. He's such a great ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He's such a role model. A lot of kids, they look up to him. I think he's a great ambassador to Saudi Arabia. And by having him over there, this is basically a way of transferring what Saudi Arabia is doing successfully to the United States, because as you know, the United States is hosting the World Cup next year. And this is basically a token to, try to transfer this good story and the pathway that Saudi Arabia has done over here to the United States to help the Trump administration to actually benefit of what the ecosystem and their trial here in Saudi Arabia, and how much actually investing in sport has contributed to the GDP. So if you look at the current Trump administration, they've done a couple steps actually that Saudi Arabia have done. One of them is the Saudi, the PIF, the Public Investment Fund. Actually, the United States has developed something like that the United States is investing in such a fund, and it's buying companies that actually the return of these companies goes to the government and the GDP of the United States. So this is basically a replica of what Saudi Arabia has been done. That's why His Excellency Al-Mayyan is among the team of MBS, and it shows you how these kind of synergy is happening also economically. It is not one-way benefit from Saudi Arabia, from the United States. Actually, it's two ways. So now Saudi Arabia has elevated from basically an ally to a strategic partner to the United States. And I have to mention, Saudi Arabia, through all the history of Saudi Arabia, we have contributed to the US GDP. We've never actually touched any taxpayer money in the United States to give us any grants, to give us any weapon for free, or to help us to get anything from any taxpayer. This is very essential. This is very important. President Trump recognized it, that we add to the GDP of the United States. We don't take it from it.
Ahmed Al-Ibrahim, brilliant to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me, especially as those live pictures came in of MBS and Donald Trump meeting. Military spending will be high on the agenda during today's meetings ahead of the highly anticipated summit. US President Donald Trump said he plans to sell US-made F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia as the two countries consider a potential multi-billion-dollar deal. Chris Gilbert reports.
It's been 7 years since this last Trump sit-down, and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is returning to the White House with business back on the agenda. A potential multi-billion-dollar deal has already been cleared by the Pentagon as Saudi Arabia seeks as many as 48 F-35 fighter jets. If the sale goes through, It would mark a significant policy shift, potentially reconfiguring power in the Middle East and testing the US commitment to maintaining Israel's military edge.
There's certainly ambitions of getting a defense agreement similar to that which Qatar received after the Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar back in September. The hope is that at least you would get kind of an executive order that, at least on paper, commits the United States to Saudi Arabia's defense.
President Trump says it's already a done deal.
Yeah, no, I am planning on doing that. Yeah. They want to buy it. They've been a great ally. They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35s here.
The meeting sits on a long history of big-ticket US-Saudi agreements. For decades, the relationship has been built on oil, security, and business, including massive energy deals during the US Bush and Obama administrations. The trip comes as Saudi Arabia continues to push ahead with its Vision 2030 reforms, opening new sectors, attracting foreign investment, and expanding its defense partnerships. Experts say it's a big opportunity for the Crown Prince.
First, really just reaffirming that Mohammed bin Salman is back, that even beyond the US-Saudi relationship enduring throughout that time period, that Mohammed bin Salman himself, is kind of welcomed, at least by the president, back in Washington, D.C.
Questions remain whether Trump will push Saudi Arabia to normalize ties with Israel and pressure the Crown Prince to change a long-held condition of an independent Palestinian state. Chris Gilbert, Arabiya English.
We can now speak to former US official Norman Roule. Norman, brilliant to have you on the show. We obviously just heard from our reporter before, but President Trump has backed the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. He made the announcement ahead of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's arrival. How unprecedented is this potential multi-billion-dollar deal?
Well, the F-35 first is part of a broader defense package, and that package itself is meant to significantly enhance Saudi Arabia's air defense, intelligence, and offensive military capabilities. So that package itself is unprecedented and will transform Saudi Arabia's military standing in the region. And I think it's important that as we look at what comes from this visit, that the F-35 deal itself doesn't draw all of the attention. Second, I think as you look back in history on aircraft sales between Saudi Arabia and the United States, it's actually fairly common for U.S. presidents, and even the controversy of aircraft sales between U.S. presidents and Saudi Arabia to have occurred. Presidents Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Obama have all made public statements regarding F-15 sales in Saudi Arabia. The F-15 sale between the United States and Saudi Arabia under President Reagan was one of the largest sales in U.S. history at the time and was quite controversial, but it made it through. So this has some historical echo to the past, and I think it's consistent with U.S. commitment to regional security evolution.
And we're just seeing Donald Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman talking and having a look at former US presidents on the wall in the White House. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about how politically sensitive this is in D.C., the prospect of selling F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia and deepening security ties moving forward, those ties, Norman, you're just talking to me about.
Well, it will be politically sensitive. Only Israel has the F-35 stealth fighter, and Israel and its supporters will press for normalization to address worries that they will claim they have as a result of Israel losing that advantage. But the world is changing. Technology is changing. The security dynamic of the region is changing. President Trump's statements clearly indicate where his perspective of the region is going. And he sees that Saudi Arabia's acquisition of these aircraft will allow it to provide the southern Arabian world with a defensive capability and a deterrent against Iran that is important. And I think that's the direction we're going to see.
And the security framework is going to be closely watched. Saudi also wants civilian nuclear cooperation and overall a deeper security partnership after the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, which did reshape the region. When you reflect on this, Norman, what do you think that a new security framework would possibly look like?
Every U.S. president since 1945 has stated at one point or another that Saudi Arabia's relationship with the United States and Saudi Arabia's importance in the world is critical to global security. And therefore, that relationship itself must be empowered to ensure that Saudi Arabia can play that role. So the agreements today, again, should be seen as part of a package, and how these agreements, the commercial agreements, the energy agreements, the mining agreements, and so on, will transform each country as they roll out over coming months and years to achieve those ambitions. I think we're going to see a lot of focus on numbers and individual systems, but it's that transformation, because Washington is going to gain a closer relationship with a key partner in a region critical to global security, and then gain tremendous investment in industries that we see as critical for us to maintain an AI edge over China. Now, Riyadh will gain access to reliable access to extraordinary technology that will allow it to maintain its leadership in the global community, improve its defense assurances, and its relationship with the U.S. economy, which will remain the world's most innovative source of advanced technology. So it's really a mutually supportive relationship that will go on for generations. I think it's important that we may well be looking at one of the most consequential meetings in the history of the U.S.-Saudi relationship over the last 80 years.
A very historic moment, Norman, but Saudi Arabia recently signed a defense pact with Pakistan following Israel's attack on Qatar. How significant was that, considering Saudi previously looked to the US for its defense capabilities?
Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have had military relations for decades. Pakistan maintained thousands of troops in Saudi Arabia for training purposes during the 1980s. Provided defensive capabilities during the Iraq war era. And the talks between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan at the chief of staff level towards some sort of a security agreement have been going on for several years. I expected, and others, some sort of agreement of this nature for several years. So it really wasn't a surprise, and I would be careful about characterizing it as only the result of the Israeli strike on Qatar. It does show that the kingdom is building out and expanding its military relationships, and I think it's likely less a message to Israel and more of a message to Iran. But it does show the kingdom is expanding its military relationships, and the kingdom is viewed as a valuable military partner by the region itself.
Norman Roule, it's always brilliant to have your insights and analysis on the show. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
As well as military spending, we're expecting discussions on multi-billion-dollar investments in American AI infrastructure, as well as increased cooperation in energy. Back in May, the Crown Prince made a $600 billion trade and investment commitment to the US. Analysts believe President Trump will be looking to firm up those pledges this week. For more on this, I'm joined from Washington by Paolo von Schirach, president at Global Policy Institute. It's brilliant to have you back on the show with me, Paolo, on such a historic day. So President Trump chose Saudi as his first official foreign trip after returning to the White House this year. Will he be looking to build on Riyadh's pledge last May to invest up to $600 billion in the US?
Well, of course, this is what Mr. Trump is trying to affirm to the domestic audience and internationally. I am bringing money to the United States. I am bringing investments. This will hopefully revitalize manufacturing, create jobs, and all these wonderful things that all presidents want to achieve and show to the voters that they are actually doing. This money pledged by Saudi Arabia, it's not in in a multi-trillion-dollar economy like the United States, it's a lot of money, but it's not overwhelming. Let's keep things in perspective. NVIDIA today, the largest manufacturer of AI chips, is worth more than the GDP of Saudi Arabia. Okay, and every other country in the world for whatever it's worth, except for the U.S. and China. So this is the size of the American economy. That said, these investments are significant, and moreover, Saudi Arabia, like other Gulf states, will have the possibility to build AI data centers, which are notoriously power hungry because they got cheap energy in their own countries that can fuel the data centers. In the US, we have a huge problem of satisfying the energy demand required by AI data centers. So that's one form of partnership that is definitely, I would suspect, going to be implemented very soon.
And President Trump is hosting a US-Saudi investment forum tomorrow. Apparently, high-profile Wall Street executives will be going. Elon Musk is also rumored to be joining that. How will this meeting outline future AI investment ties and sales between the two countries?
Well, I think this is definitely something is going to happen. Now, how significant, what scale it will have, remains to be seen. But again, this is not surprising for the reason I just mentioned. The Gulf states, and we have similar agreements with Dubai, by the way, the US, that has pledged to be a heavy investor, having bet on America as the winner in the global battle, if you wish, for artificial intelligence dominance. Is it going to be the US or is it going to be China? Well, the Gulf states are betting on the US, which is good for the US. And so that is very, very positive. Now, regarding other investments, we'll see. Keep in mind, Saudi Arabia is not flush with money as it used to be. It's kind of strapped. There are enormous, investment plans and activities in Saudi Arabia itself where the kingdom is committed to spending hundreds of billions of dollars at home. So we have to keep this in perspective. That said, this cements this relationship, which has one fundamental common denominator. We are all against Iran. That's really the underlying, unspoken rationale for all this. Why all this work? Why is this all even happening? Because Saudi Arabia is worried about Iran. We are worried about Iran. And guess what? Israel is worried about Iran. So that is the common denominator uniting this different players with different agendas, but this common problem, which is Iran as the major security threat to the region.
And I want to ask you about the Trump Organization, which is separate, of course, from the government, but still within the family. And it has agreed large-scale investments in Saudi Arabia. Does this showcase Trump's economic commitment to the region on a personal level?
Absolutely. Well, that's, again, in the past, these kinds of mingling of personal and state, activities would have been considered, with some concern that you mix the two things. These days, I guess we are in a different world. We're not going to pass judgment on this, but this is what's going on. And clearly, the Trump Organization is definitely heavily involved in a variety of discussions and negotiations with Saudi Arabian entities as well as entities in the Emirates. And there's a lot of investments at multiple levels, which are very likely to benefit Trump's family. He is himself right now not involved in business because he's the president, but it's no mystery that his sons are, doing all this. And ultimately, this is a family business.
Paolo von Schirach, it's always good to have you on the show. Thank you for speaking to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Another important conversation between the US and Saudi Arabia is the two-state solution. A senior Palestinian Authority official has said Saudi Arabia seeks to find a path to establishment of a Palestinian state before normalizing ties with Israel. It comes as the UN Security Council voted in favor of President Trump's peace plan, which includes the establishment of an international stabilization force. For more on this, I'm joined from Beirut by Raghida Dergham, advisor to Arabiya on American and international affairs. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time and for joining me.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on. I just want to start with the UN Security Council. It has approved a US-backed proposal that does pave a way for an international stabilization force in Gaza. But what challenges remain? There seem to be so many obstacles to come in this US-backed 20-point peace plan.
So many obstacles indeed, because it is going very slow. And that's why the administration decided that it needed to go to the Security Council to give an internationalization aspect to what is known now as the Trump plan, the 20-point Trump plan. The challenges are many, including the International Stabilization Force, which is facing difficulty recruiting countries to come in. And the main reason is that those countries don't want to come into a confrontation with Hamas, to disarm Hamas, if you will. And so who is going to disarm Hamas if Hamas is not willing to disarm itself? Therefore, then the question is, will Israel do it? And will the United States approve an Israeli barrage on Hamas in order to disarm it? So the challenges are many. I guess the challenges are also related to the Israeli position, because the Israelis are also not budging on their insistence on having control of Gaza and having their own plans for Gaza. So it's a challenge. There is many problems, not a problem. What seems to be the case right now is that the administration is intent and absolutely decided that there is nothing that's going to fail the Trump plan, which is not only for Gaza, but it's also for the Middle East.
And the resolution also references a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. And we know Israel is strongly opposed to a two-state solution. Are we likely to see the US apply more pressure on Israel to get Saudi on board?
There is no other way. The United States has got to apply pressure on Israel if it wants its Abrahamic Accords to be thought about seriously by the Saudis. That is what President Trump wants, in effect. There is no way that the continued annexation, de facto annexation of the Israelis, by the Israelis of the West Bank, not only of Gaza, that is an obstacle towards the actual building of the Palestinian state. So the Saudis made it very clear, just don't go anywhere else. You want normalization with Israel, and you want us to do it, then you really need to force the Israelis to deliver on a two-state solution. The problem is that what kind of pressure would President Trump be able to put on Israel? I don't think the Congress or the president himself would want to withhold weapons or military equipment to Israel, F-35s or others. But there is, and there's the personality of Donald Trump. When he says, no, there will be no annexation of the West Bank, people have to take it, and they do take his words seriously. When he says to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, do not fail me because I am bigger than you and I supply you with what you need, then Netanyahu will have to take note of that. His problem is that his government is so extremist, but there is no way there will be a normalization, definitely not on the strip of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. But what the administration wanted is to bring about, as you correctly pointed out, a pathway towards a Palestinian state and self-determination, and they thought that was a good face-saving device, and it is important, and not only it's just for face-saving device, but it's important to have the Crown Prince receive this assurance from the United States, and it's important to have the issue of Palestine in the Security Council in the United Nations, because that's about internationalization of the Palestinian issue.
So President Donald Trump, he sees himself as a peacemaker and, of course, a deal maker. With Mohammed bin Salman by his side, is this a new era for the Middle East that we are now seeing?
Indeed, it's very much a new era. The bilateral relationship between the two countries is at a very important, incredibly intimate and constructive point. Also, don't forget the chemistry, as it's always said, between the two men. The two men like each other, and somehow that also is a necessity in making policies. But more importantly, I think, if we look at the vision of MBS, it's 2030, but it's for not only Saudi Arabia, it is for the whole Middle East, the peace of the Middle East, the countries of the Middle East going into the path of renovation, if you will, sort of like, they have to stop the wars and the it's construction rather than destruction. If you put the vision of MBS together with a plan of Donald Trump called the Trump Plan, you will see that they merge in their aspirations for peace, for prosperity, for taking the region away from destruction, as I said, into construction. So I think the two men will work on that, and that vision and the plan will intersect, and I think that will give momentum to both men and both visions and plans.
Raghida Dergham, it was brilliant to have you on the show. And as you did say, a warm relationship there between the US President Donald Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as they did greet each other at the White House. Now, a reminder of our top stories. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Washington as he sits down with President Trump at the White House. Defense deals will be on the table as Trump confirms the US will sell F-35s to Saudi Arabia, calling them a great ally. And the UN Security Council approved Trump's peace plan, including the establishment of an international stabilization force in Gaza. It's been called an important step in the consolidation of the ceasefire. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on X. And we'll be back in a couple of hours' time with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.